So here's part 3 on how to make a wind-on leader with Seaguar Threadlock braid and Seaguar Fluorocarbon. One of the things you really need is some kind of a jig. I made this one out of a cutting board and some bolts and washers. And basically I need to hold my line tight so I can wrap or serve this to lock the fluorocarbon up inside of the braid. So we stretch this across here. And so just big washers, rubber washers on here, so it just holds the line nice and tight. Okay, so nice and tight there. The next thing you need is a serving tool of some sort. This is a really nice one. It allows me to control the tension a little bit better than some of the other types. There's another one here if I can actually see it. This is another type. It just holds the spool of basically floss or another type of braid. It holds it in there, the spool here, and then runs through this part. It's fairly easy to use, much less expensive, but it doesn't do quite as good of a job in my opinion. So I purchased one of these really nice ones. And like I said, by adjusting these two nuts, you can adjust the tension on the line as it wraps around. So the first thing you do is you need a loop needle. So you can see doing these wind-on leaders, you do need some tools, but you know, and it is a little bit time consuming, but it's well worth it in my opinion. And you know, I make these things while I'm watching TV, watching a movie or something. So the first thing you do is lay your needle on top of your line here. Take your thread, have it going away from the loop, and then wrap it about 5 times. And then you go through the loop of your needle, if you can see it. And then pull that tag end, ooh, it caught. Pull that loop on the tag end through your wraps. And then I've got a very loose knot here, and just tighten it slowly about 1.5 inches, 2 inches from the end. And again, here's the end where you can see where it joins. So I want to put this right here. Once I have it in position, then I tighten that down. So that's going to hold that in place. And we cut off the tag end. Then I'm going to take my serving tool and I'm going to wind it up to the line. I've got it a little bit loose at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this line all the way up to the end here and then all the way back. So by just keeping a little bit of pressure on the back end of it and holding that line, I just start with a few wraps. And once you get it going, you can kind of spin it. And that way it's just wrapping straight down the length of the line. And a little farther to go. And a little bit farther, if you can still see that. And basically you're just going to go past the end, just a couple of wraps. And I'm going to turn this around. And with a little bit of pressure going that way, I'm going to run it back over the top of itself. And again, I usually start those first couple nice and easy. So I make sure I get that thing going the right direction. And just a few more wraps. I'm going to go over the top of that original knot. And then just a few wraps past the original knot. So then I'm going to pull this out just a little bit, give myself some slack line, and do a quick half hitch. And let's pull that tight right to the end. And that's going to keep that whole thing from unraveling. So give myself a little line to work with. And cut it. So it's just kind of locked in place there. It's not going to go anywhere. When you wrap it nice and tight, it really locks into itself here. So then what I'm going to do is 12 alternating half hitches. And that'll keep it in a nice line, the knots in a nice line, and keep it nice and snug. So I already did one, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, oops, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then I'm going to do one 6 wrap. 3, 4, 5, 6. And tighten that nice and slowly so it comes down nice and clean down on the end. And just give that a good tug. Nice and snug. And then with my razor knife. So the cool thing is as opposed to like a bimini twist or anything, I mean, there's no real knot here. This is going to go through the guides just basically like line. It's a little stiffer than your normal line, but it's really clean. Now, to really ensure that it's going to stay in place, I get some Zap-A-Gap super glue and just put a small bead over the top of that. I like the Zap-A-Gap. It stays fairly flexible. And just rub that in. Being careful not to glue your fingers together. And this is the Zap-A-Gap gel, so it doesn't drip all over the place as I'm doing this. Wipe that off my finger a little bit. It dries fairly quickly. And once I have that, I'll just coil that up, and then what I've got is a pouch here that has, you know, there's my 130s, there's my 100s, there's my 80s and my 60s. So I've got a pouch full of all these different size wind-on leaders that are just ready to go. And then if I need to swap one out, it's very easy to do out on the water. I might have to whip a new loop on the main line, but that's quite simple. I just don't like having to make the leaders out on the water, so I usually do those well in advance. That Zap-A-Gap glue is already dry, so I'll just coil this up, and I will have another wind-on leader. This is 100 pounds, so this is for marlin fishing, so hopefully we'll get on some big marlin next week in Puerto Rico. So again, that's Seaguar Fluorocarbon, Seaguar Threadlock hollow core. If you want a list of all the tools I needed to do this or anything like that, feel free to holler. I'll be happy to help you out. It's time consuming, and the first ones you do maybe don't look so pretty, but the more of these you do, the quicker it is and the easier it is. And to me, it's such a great way to do this. I make these wind-on leaders from basically from 40-pound test up, and I mean, being able to cast them and everything else is so nice. So anyway, like I said, give me a shout if you have any questions on how to do these, and I'll be happy to help you. Until next time, take care.